All right. Well, welcome into the Cris Collinsworth podcast featuring the great Richard Sherman and presented by our good friends at DraftKings, who are, again, giving you a chance to turn $1 into $100. It's more than a chance, because if you use the promo code PFF, all you have to do is to pick a fighter to land one punch during UFC 259. And you get the $100. So 100-to-1 odds on any fighter you want landing one punch. Now, the odds are so astronomical that your dude gets knocked out by the other dude without ever landing a punch, or almost zero. So you're giving away a free $100. Why would you do that? So we are going to give you $100 and also a great podcast today. We have free agent wide receiver from the Chicago Bears, Allen Robinson, a very interesting guy and someone that PFF has in the top 5 of all the free agents in the league, coming off of back-to-back 1,000-yard years. Phenomenal player, great guy to talk with, really understands some of the ins and outs of this league. And we got into a lot of his current situation and what he's looking for, either from the Chicago Bears or his next team and next contract. Also, a very interesting discussion about how the Bears' 2-quarterback system this year with Mitch Trubisky and Nick Foles really impacted that offense, and it surprised him. College quarterbacks he's impressed with. The inner workings of free agency between Richard and Allen, both of whom are going into free agency now, hopefully, as far as Allen Robinson is concerned. A very interesting discussion there. And I can tell you, it ain't all about the money, which it usually is, but it wasn't for these two guys. So here we go, the podcast, wide receiver, Chicago Bears, Allen Robinson, and the great Richard Sherman. All right, here we go. This is going to be one of my favorites here. We have the great Richard Sherman, of course. We have the good fortune of having the man on the show every single week. And now we are joined by Allen Robinson. And for those of you who may be living under a rock somewhere, I'll give you a little bit on Allen. He's 6'2", 220-ish. Already has 39 touchdowns, just 1 yard shy of 6,000 total yards, 5,999. That's a little painful. Just stay with 1 yard short. Painful. 3 1,000-yard seasons, including the last 2. And most would argue, Richard, I'm just going to say most. I'm not going to say I would argue. I'm just going to say most would argue that he really has yet to have that great quarterback. He sort of started off with Christian Hackenberg, right? Penn State. We go a little Blake Bortles. We go Mitch Trubisky. We go Nick. And everybody has always had the same question. What would Allen Robinson, with perhaps the greatest catch radius in the history of God's green earth, the guy can catch it 8 feet behind him or 18 feet over his head or 18 feet in front of him, what would the great Allen Robinson do if he were to play with Arob or one of those kind of guys?
Man, I'll say this. I think that, especially for myself, something that I really factor into the offseason and preparing for every year is, not really worrying about who is throwing me the ball and things like that, just really focusing on getting better each and every year. I think that after my second year in the league, my third year was probably the only year that somebody could say that I didn't have a better year than the year I had prior, and I really took that to heart and I really looked at everything, for myself, it was a tough year that year, with some of the things that were going on, quarterback situation, same thing with we fired our GM, fired our head coach, So when I take my approach into the offseason, I take a kind of, when I go into that mode of training, I really want to foolproof my game, and I do that and I say that because for myself, man, things like that you can't control, and it's so hard to be able to control without possibly, having so many other butterfly effect, factors, as far as if I play here, then, certain situations on, obviously, possible financial regards, like Richard was saying earlier, where you live at. There's so many things that you can't control, So for myself, I really just try to focus on controlling what I can, and I've been able to do that my entire career, So I never really focus on, I don't really care too much about, who's throwing the ball. As crazy as that may sound as a receiver, I'm not chasing anything yet. I'm saying I'm going out here being the best player that I could be. and trying to impact the teams that I'm on, impact the players, impact the coaches, and things like that. Because like I said before, man, as a player, you can kind of factor those into different decisions. But at the end of the day, man, it's a league where dudes get hurt, players get traded, it's a lot of things, so you have to factor in, the totality of everything rather than just who's throwing me the ball. Because as we saw, I actually knew somebody personally who went to go play with the Colts, and then Andrew Luck retired that preseason, and that was a decision that he solely made to really go play with Andrew Luck, So, I mean, it's a lot of different things that you can kind of factor in. But for myself, the biggest thing is that, man, when I go into that training mode in the offseason, I really, after my second year, I've really foolproof my game. So I don't care who's throwing the ball. I don't care who's calling the plays. Like I'm out here. I'm in that mode where I'm trying to continue to get better and impact everybody around me on the offensive side of the ball.
Yeah, I think you need to hire Richard as your agent, though. I think let Richard worry about all those things, will you? Let's let Richard focus in on that.
Right. We got to focus in on the team. We got to focus in on getting them max value, because obviously they've been underpaying the man since he left Jacksonville. And I think all that matters. I think at the end of the day, I think it's going to be a great offseason if they let him go. If they let him see free agency, I think that's a big factor. With the limited cap, the franchise tag might seem even more attractive because it's a lower number than it would have been if it was 210 or whatever it was supposed to be. But I think you made something out of nothing a lot of times, and I think that's what people admire most about you, is that you never complain, you never throw anybody under the bus. You just put your hard hat on, grab your lunch pail and you go to work. And I think that's going to benefit you down the line when hopefully you do get a quarterback that is more efficient and more accurate with the ball. But I think it's all going to be great. It's all positive this offseason. Free agency can be such an odd time because, you feel like the pretty girl at the prom, everybody calling you, everybody texting you, everybody emailing, and it makes you, it kind of is nice. It's nice to feel valued, and feel appreciated. But at the end of the day, a lot of those teams that are calling and texting are the teams that are struggling, and I don't know if, in my situation, I'll be like, I don't know if you're me away from, being where I want you to be, if I'm going to put you, in the conversation to chase the trophy. And a lot of times I've only been in it once, but that's the conversation I'm having with them. That's the conversation I'm having with myself. I'm having conversations with my wife about location. How realistic is it for me to spend 6 months there? Do we buy? Do we rent? What's the state income tax? What's all the ramifications, going into it that I got to deal with? Hey, are they practicing, even practice schedule? You know what I mean? Like, are y'all practicing three hours a day?
I agree, man. And for myself, going through this for the second time, this time around, it's so much more comforting than the first time because I was coming off an ACL injury, so, I mean, that was a whole different thing in itself, but again, I'm very similar, to yourself in the standpoint of, even when you went to San Fran, I think that, you probably saw and believed in what San Fran had and what they were building, and I think that you're, again, a player like myself where, you can be a cornerstone piece to a defense, so it's like, and I think that players like us, have tremendous foresight for our own careers, depending on what the situation is. Like, again, like some people thought I was crazy when I went to Chicago after leaving a team who just went to the AFC Championship, but I knew for my career and where I wanted to take my game, the culture that Chicago was building, I mean, it's no doubt in my mind if somebody had told me, when I signed that I wouldn't have a losing season. And out of 3 seasons, we go to the playoffs twice. I mean, that's why I went there, So, again, definitely factor in all those things, But I think the toughest thing about this league rather than some other leagues is that, you can't guarantee winning. Like, that's something in this league that's so different than any other of the leagues, is that you can try to put yourself in the best possible situation. But in this league, guarantee the aspect of winning is so far from one single player's control or something that you may see in the spring rather than when he gets to February. And I think that's, a lot of things that people from the outside don't really factor in. It's like, well, you can go here, you can win, but it's like, man, people get hurt, things happen. It's so tough to guarantee winning in this league. So again, for myself, I really look at it, as far as, again, how can I impact, the players around me, the talent of the players around me, the culture, those are the things that I truly find, that a lot of winning teams have, and a lot of things that the winning teams value is, the culture, the players, how is the communication between everybody, because that's ultimately what kind of sets up the standard for winning.
Well, I'll just say this. The prettiest girl at the prom always has a crown on her head at the end of the night. So let's try and put a crown on the head of Allen Robinson here and find out exactly where might be sort of the best situation. Allen, let's start with the basics of this thing, because you have the full Monty in front of you, right? I mean, you could sign a long-term contract. You could be tagged for, I think it's about $16.5 million, something like that. You could be signed and traded to another team. Have you gotten any sort of feel? The last thing I read on you where a contract talk was happening was in September. Has there been anything that's happened since then?
There hasn't, and again, I mean, now I'm not sure as far as the other side, how that is being communicated, whatever the case may be. But from my terms, that hasn't happened. And again, for myself, I think that, going into my 8th season, I'm really ready to, see and really indulge in the next chapter of my career, whether that be in Chicago or whether that be somewhere else. My thing is, I'm a guy who, when I step into a situation, obviously guys will want to sign a longer term deal, even for myself as a player, I'm one of those guys where obviously things take some time and stuff like that. So stepping into a situation, I want to be in a situation where, I feel like whatever it is, I have the time, I had the ability to be able to help build that, to be able to win, So again, for myself, we haven't had contract talks. And again, I mean, I'm not, because I had spoke to somebody, a couple of weeks ago, and it was a whole story that came out. And I mean, I'm not begging anybody to pay me. Like that's not where I'm at. I know what I bring to the game. I know what I can do. So again, I'm not begging. I'm not asking. Whatever happens may happen. And at the end of the day, it's a business. And as you go through this thing a couple of times, you understand that on both sides. On the player side, it's a business. Based on them and what they're factoring into their career. And I understand on the other side, it's the same way. So again, I mean, whatever happens with that, happens. But whatever the next chapter is for me, I'm definitely excited and looking forward to it.
My question is, like, what exactly, obviously this is the second time around we talked about, how comfortable it is this time. You're not coming off of major surgery, a great season. What exactly are you looking for from an organization? Because, unlike last time, I'm sure you feel that, you got more power, you got more, say so in this decision. So is it a cultural fit? Is it offensive coordinator? Is it just overall team? What you looking for most?
Culture fit, and I would say culture, definitely as far as offense, and then also, when it kind of comes to the team aspect, and again, from being in certain locker rooms, I think cultures with teams are huge, like I mean, and you've been a part of some great cultures, yourself, Richard. So as far as like when you kind of see that, you understand how far, that can take a team. One, then the second would be on the offensive coordinator side. I personally feel like I can fit into 97% of schemes, but definitely being able to be in a scheme where, I'm able to move around. I'm able to have those impactful plays on first down, able to get in the mix on third down, but at the same time, I'm not opposed to, playing with some of the other, dope receivers in the league. I think that that's something that, I had a chance to do. I mean, we have some real good young guys in Chicago, but I even think back to when I played with Allen Hurns, and me and him both went for over 1,000 yards, and just kind of the energy that we had to compete to make each other better on a week in, week out basis. And, that definitely was exciting too.
No, I was just going to ask a quick question. What happens if you get tagged? In other words, you can't get a contract. And we've seen Deshaun Watson. We've even seen Russell Wilson now, guys who have signed mega long-term contracts, pushing back, wanting trades. Now, this is sort of the halfway house of that, right? When you get tagged, it's a 1-year deal. You're sort of forced into it. Would you take that?
That's the tough situation, man, because it's, for myself, I think that I'm, definitely deserving of a long-term deal, not only as a player, but as a person who is involved in the culture. I'm a person who I feel like I've helped build Chicago's culture. And I think wherever, whether it be Chicago or somewhere else, wherever my next stop would be, I think that I will be a contributing factor to that culture, and again, for myself is, that's a significant value, and when you talk about, a 1-year deal or whatever the case may be, something that you're kind of forced into as a player, when you're coming off of 3,000 yards in 3 seasons, when you help take a team to the playoffs 2 out of 3 years, it's like you do feel deserving of the long term, no matter where that would be. I think that's what kind of makes the franchise tag so tough. It's not the fact that, I think I can get a long-term deal probably in 31 other teams, now depending on how that may look, depending on teams' caps and the players that they have and stuff like that. But as a player, that should all kind of be up to your discretion. It's like you can factor things in and say, do I want to take what here? Do I want to do this? Do I want to do that? But the franchise tag really kind of hinders you. And then again, it puts a lot of stuff back onto the player, especially in my situation where, again, I think that I brought a lot to the game over the past 3 years, so that's a very tough situation, and for myself, I probably would say that's definitely, on the bottom, of my list of choices.
Yeah. How about this one? Let me lay it. So going to play with Aaron Rodgers or, Russell Wilson or Deshaun Watson, that's an easy choice, right? You know what you're going to get, you know what you're going to have. But you also know that a lot of these teams that are drafting first, second, third, and fourth are sitting there on a bunch of cash, and they're going to have a young quarterback, and they're going to need somebody like you, right? So there's real value. There's value above and beyond what you can do as a player. I'm kind of falling in love with some of these young quarterbacks. I got to say, I think Trevor Lawrence and Zach Wilson and Justin Fields, Trey Lance, Mac Jones, they all have some skills they're going to bring in here. Would that scare you off?
No, it wouldn't at all. Again, just kind of my approach to the game, again, like I said before, man, I'm not a person who, I feel like I can pretty much build with anybody who's throwing the ball or anybody who's calling the plays. I think that, that's another big part of my game, so that doesn't scare me away at all. Again, when I came to Chicago, I came in with a second-year Trubisky, and I think that we, build and got to a point where, again, we were able to connect on, back-to-back 1,000-yard seasons. I had 200 catches in the past 2 years. We were able to get to the playoffs, and we were able to do some good things, So, again, for myself, I think that that's something that, that I bring to the table. And as a vet, you understand that, a lot of times value that you bring as a vet is that you're able to uplift some of the younger players coming into the league, especially as a receiver with a quarterback or a receiver with other young receivers.
That's a factor that I don't think people understand, especially fans. Fans are always like, oh man, let's bring this guy in. He runs this, he does this, he does that. And it's like, well, he's an individual. You know what I mean? And if you think that way and you're all about me and you're all about me, there's no championship in your future. Because in order to win Super Bowl, you have to be about team, especially if you're a vet player that you're coming in and these kids respect. So you have to, some people use that respect as just like, yeah, you know what I mean? Like, pump my chest out and show like I'm the man. But some people use that to bring, rising tide lifts all ships. So you encourage these kids. You use that respect that they have to encourage them to study more, to take care of their bodies, to not go out and drink, to focus on the season and use that to influence the team in a positive way. Because like you said, you're only as strong as your weakest link. And so every culture and every team that I've been a part of, I always focus on that. Like it takes more time, it takes more energy, it stresses you out, it puts you under the 8 ball a lot of times because you're sitting there, calling kids all the time, going to their houses, sitting in the locker room, talking to them checking in on everybody, in person, having conversations with guys. And it takes a toll on you, but that's what they're paying for. You know what I mean?
For sure. And I think that's something that's very undervalued, and again, as as older players, you know, we see all the time, you know, we could just draft this player, or we could just do that, or we could just do this, you know, when it comes to younger players. But it's like, it's not the same. You know, it's like when you have people who, you know, at the same time, it may be guys on offense who are frustrated because of how the offense is going. You got younger guys. You got to just continue to talk to them about the bigger picture of the season. You know, even talking to guys about the bigger picture of their own personal careers. You know, getting guys together in the offseason to train and do different things. You know, the camaraderie of it all. Like, I mean, like, you know what I'm saying? Like you said, it takes a lot, but as vet players, you know, that's, you know, what I've learned to embrace. And that's what I learned to, you know, that's a part of me that's helping to build a culture, you know, to ignite a culture, you know, to fuel something with young guys that, you know, if you take a vet out of the mix, you see a totally different team, you know, because players relate to players far differently than coaches do. And coaches can only do so much. You know, coaches aren't in the locker room, coaches aren't in the huddle, coaches aren't on the field, you know. So as players, you know, you definitely bring that on the field coach kind of aspect, you know, and you definitely can help guys along the way, whether if it's C coverages, whether if it's something to think about with a release or certain technique, you know. So that's a very undervalued thing in my opinion.
Yeah, one of the great things with Allen, and Richard, maybe you can address this better than I can, but as a receiver that can play outside and go get the contested catches with the deep balls and set up guys and get them deep, that can do all the stuff over the middle and go catch it without regard to his body, has the short area quickness to play inside if he needs to, has the blocking skills at 220 to crack, to take on any backer sitting in that zone. As a defender, having somebody that can play all those positions at that level, that makes a difference.
Oh, it definitely makes a huge difference, you know, and like Arob said earlier, like it makes a difference, especially even more when you have another dynamic receiver, because then there's no, hey, well, you know, if he's at 3, you know he's getting the ball. So, you know, hey, he's running a special, all eyes are on him. But if you have multiple, then it's like, hey, well, he's at 1, he's at 3. Well, shit, you got to shade over him, and then we gotta find a way to help the backer, or it's just gonna be a tough down all day, you know. And I think that's what makes him special, and that's a respect level that he's gonna have from other guys, is that he's so versatile, you know, and that he doesn't take plays off. He plays hard every play, whether it's run, whether it's pass. You got receivers in this league still, you know, that walk off on run plays, like walk off, hey, it's run play, just hey, y'all have fun, you know. They're playing with 10 guys, And I mean, I don't have a lot of respect for that. And I'm sure, you know, it sends a message to young guys. And those are some of the players that aren't culture builders, that aren't guys that, you know, they might make a lot of money, but they're not making a lot of money because of what they can do and the impact that they can make on the team. Their only impact is on the field. Their only impact is between those lines. And a lot of times, guys like this, you have impact between the lines, playing slot, playing inside, playing outside, doing all those things, blocking. But it's also setting the tone, setting an example of what's to be expected. Because if that's your number 1 guy and he's doing all the dirty work and doing everything and making no excuses, then the number 2, 3, 4, 5 guy can't make any excuse. Can't say I'm not doing anything.
Most definitely. And even, you know, creating a certain culture in practice, you know, for guys being able to, you know, really go out there and be effective and get stuff out of practice. You know, I think that's something, you know, I had a coach when I came into the league for my first 3 years in Jacksonville, Coach Sullivan. You know, he's a guy who always taught me, whether if it's walkthrough, whether if it's practice, work your technique. You know, I joke with some of the other guys, you know, all the time, and some of the young guys, and say that for me, like, I could go through a walkthrough and that's just like me having a practice. You know, mentally, like I'm literally working the same thing. For some guys, you know, walkthrough just a walkthrough. You know, it's like, okay, you know, toss the ball around a little bit, but it's like, you know, when you can take your game to the next level and you get the same thing that you get out of a practice in a walkthrough, now you really start to enhance your game, you know. And even, you know, as I talk to guys, you know, through those periods and kind of working your feet at the top, you know, thinking about, okay, if I get this coverage and walk through, you know, you're able to get so many more reps than you would normally get if you just practicing the plays that you in, you know. So it's a lot of different, you know, ways that you can impact guys, man. And I think, again, for me, the number one thing is, I tell guys all the time, man, practice and walkthrough is so significant, because for myself, I'm a very visual person. You know, if I run a route 2 times, it's like I ran it 10. because I'm thinking about on other times, okay, if I get this leverage, how would I run this? Like, okay, they may play me like this. How would I run this? Okay, like, do anybody got any tape on if we get 2-man? Like, I know they don't really run too much 2-man, but if we get it, how kind of should, so it's a lot of different things that you can, again, like you were saying, bring to the table, that's not, saw on Sunday.
Yeah, let's go over maybe the top of the list possibility that we really haven't even addressed yet. And that is the Chicago Bears sign you to a long-term deal, right? That would be great for everybody. It'd be great for Chicago. There's a lot going on in Chicago right now, and I don't know how much that plays in to your decision either. I mean, you've got, the old saying, you got 2 quarterbacks, you've got none, right? So between Nick and Mitch out there playing quarterback, how unsettled does it feel? And does that factor into this?
Honestly, I would say going into the season last year, it was something where I didn't, think, because I hadn't really played with 2 quarterbacks for, a while. So I really didn't think or know how it would, affect me as a player or affect our offense. But I definitely underestimated that, because for us, it's like we ran 2 different schemes. We had 2 different people calling the plays. Like you're trying to learn and adjust to 2 different people on the fly. Nick, when he gets to the line, he likes to get you into the right play, into the right looks and things like that. He's very gung-ho on checks and adjustments at the line of scrimmage. So for guys, that's something that guys had to get used to. Even some of the young guys being in their playbooks nonstop, because Nick, if he sees something, he's going to get to, a block flat. If he sees, a possible nickel blitz or something like that, or he might get to a screen, or he might. So it's like the whole playbook is open, at any point in time. And then also when you have Mitch, is the scheme is a little bit different. We want to use his athleticism some more. So some of the different concepts that we bring into and kind of evolve into the offense are a little different. Last year we had a new offensive coordinator as well. So coming into training camp, we're kind of learning his system. And then once Nick came in, we're kind of going back to a different kind of system, more of a West Coast style. So it was a lot last year, and it was something that, for myself, I definitely underestimated, as far as the impact that it may have having 2 different quarterbacks and, playing in multiple kind of schemes, so it was tough a little bit sometimes last year.
Do you ever fool around and think about Jacksonville again? Right, Richard? Because all of a sudden Jacksonville now, they've got a ton of money. They've got Urban Meyer coming in there. They're going to have Trevor Lawrence. They're going to have him on a rookie contract. So they're going to be able to pay your salary over the next 4 or 5 years. Going home doesn't sound all bad right now.
And, it's Florida, so it's no state tax.
Oh, I heard that. Why am I in Longboat Key right now? Let me figure this out.
I'll say this, man. This probably was the most tuned in to the college football playoff that I had been. Which is funny, watching some of the young quarterbacks, man, and just watching Trevor Lawrence's pro day and things like that. And I think he's going to be an outstanding player in this league. Also, guys like Justin Fields and, watching those guys play, it definitely does open my mind up personally, to, the possibilities of different situations, and again, and I'm a person, I'm not opposed to anything, like I said before, man. I think that everything is on the table. I think that's even what's making this process a little bit more exciting, I think it would be, dope coming into possibly playing with the next NFL prodigy of the quarterback position, seeing how guys are starting to transcend that position at the quarterback spot, based on their, athleticism and being able to throw, off schedule throws and things like that. So, definitely that's a possibility.
Like there's a couple teams like in that similar situation, high draft pick quarterback, likely, a lot of cap, but taxes, the first and second pick, it's a huge disparity. Jacksonville on one end, no taxes. Yep. New York on the other end, 12%, something crazy like that. How much will that factor in,
Well, I think also something that I personally have felt a difference of that has been exciting is playing in a little bit bigger market. I think that that's something that, going from Jacksonville to Chicago. You know, I remember when I signed to Chicago, when I first got off the flight and I started going around in Chicago, it's like, you know, wow, like this is a huge market. You know, they love the Bears, a ton of energy, you know, a sports city, you know, and I'm assuming New York is probably very similar to that, you know, when it comes to, you know, the Jets and the Giants and just, you know, being in the Big Apple, you know, and that's why I train anyway in the off season, you know, so I'm up there a lot. So I already kind of see it and feel it from a big city aspect. But, you know, that's also a part of that can kind of, you know, offset the taxes and stuff like that a little bit.
Well, the other thing is, if you haven't watched any of the Zach Wilson tape, go put some on. I'm going to tell you what now. If it weren't for the fact that Trevor Lawrence has been kissed by the gods from the minute he walked into college football and has done against the very best competition, has played at the very top of the game, and I would never say anything but great things about him. He deserves all the praise that he has. But if all you did was get dropped down from Mars and you didn't know any of that story and you put on the two tapes, right? Trevor and Zach, and you just watch those two, you go, that's pretty close. Now he doesn't have the size, you know, at 200 pounds, and he's going to take a beating and all that kind of stuff. But you want to talk about the guy who plays the game a little like Arod? A little bit. Now, I know that's a major stretch, what I'm saying right there. But this young man has some potential to him.
No, definitely. And I would definitely have to agree with you on that, you know, from the tape that I've saw. You know, I think also, you know, something that I think, you know, has been a little bit undervalued is, I mean, you know, the where he was able to take that BYU unit, you know, especially last year, you know, being able to win games. And, you know, again, I mean, because I remember looking up last year and seeing a BYU ranked, you know, and it's like, hold on now, like BYU is ranked. But then once you start watching him play, you know, I think that it's very undervalued for quarterbacks in college, you know, who can elevate a lot of those players around. I can't name anybody else on BYU's team, you know, and I know they had a very solid team, you know, but I think that's a true testament to the quarterback, you know, elevating the players around him. And I think that's significant because that's what you want, especially, you know, on the other side of a guy being able to spin it, is that you want a guy that comes into your locker room and be able to elevate everybody else around him, especially when you talk about that position.
Yeah. And Richard, the other one is Justin Fields. And you want to talk about just a pure talent, the quickness of release, strength of arm, runs like Cam Newton. I mean, this guy has it all. Now, he's got a little bit of a ways to go, you know, as far as just getting the ball out of his hands. You know, he can hold it a little bit because I think some of those quarterbacks, when their ability to run has always been 1A, you know, they're just so gifted running the football. But as far as making all the throws and doing all the things that a quarterback has to do, I'm just saying there's going to be some really impactful young players coming into the league out of this rookie quarterback class. They can play.
I agree. And even the quarterback from North Dakota State, you know,
yeah.
From the tape that I saw him, you know, he's pretty good as well. You know, has athletic ability, you know, has the ability to throw the ball and make any throw on the field, you know, big, strong kid. So I would agree with you 100%.
Yeah, the one that's always interesting to me, and I'm curious how you guys would evaluate. I'm sure you've seen a little bit of them anyway, from Alabama and Mac Jones, right? So you go, okay, as far as physically gifted, you know, those other four guys, they just blow you out of the water. And here's Mac Jones. All he does, 41 touchdowns, 4 interceptions. And college football is the only place you get punished for having a great year because your team's too good, right? In the NFL, if your quarterback wins the Super Bowl, it's all about the quarterback. In college football, if your team wins wins the college football championships, oh, how good is he? His team's great around him. He's not that good. How that gets split out that way, I have no idea. But with Mac Jones, where do you think he fits in now to the NFL, given the fact that he had all that talent around him?
It's crazy because you say that. And like, that's not true because they literally 2 quarterbacks just came from out of there. Like you just had Tua who just left from literally almost an identical team minus, huge parts that left, and he wasn't punished for it. He wasn't like they were like, well, Tua had all these, NFL caliber players, so we don't think he should go top 5. They still took him top 5. And I think, but for some reason, I think it's the lack of mobility for Mac Jones. That's killing him, because they think the way of the old quarterback, even though Tom Brady, who's not moving outside of those hashes, period, point blank, just won another Super Bowl. I think people still feel like the league is trending towards mobile quarterbacks, and that the pocket passer is the way. Even though Mac Jones is making all the throws, very accurate, hitting in tight windows, played in a pro style offense, I think they're punishing him for the lack of mobility based on just recency bias. The way things have been as of lately. You got all these guys moving around. You got Pat Mahomes, you got Russell, you got Kyler, you got Deshaun, you got Arod. You got guys that just can move around and extend plays. And shoot, I'm missing Josh in Buffalo. But I think that's the thing that's hurting him the most, is that he's not moving around. He's not doing it. He has all the NFL talent. He makes all the throws, but the lack of mobility is the only thing. And I don't think that's an issue. I think in the right offense, like in Kyle's offense, this West Coast, this McVay, this, hey, drop back, throw into tight windows, throw this drift post, hey, read out of this, throw the wheel, read through this, throw the rolling dig. Like, I think this quarterback will be really valuable.
And again, I personally think that his question on athleticism comes down to a lot of teams where they really have to dig and be correct on his cerebral aspect of the game, because he has to play the game from a much more cerebral position. When you look at a person like Deshaun Watson, Kyler Murray, Russell, those guys are easy for coaches because they get you out of jail, like, easily, but when you have a person that, may be a little, okay, it's like, how's our O-line now? Like, we don't know if he's going to be able to get out the pocket or whatever the case may be. So I think that in situations like that, the onus really falls more so on management, which is why I think a lot of management really kind of errs on more athletic dudes, because they can definitely cover that aspect up, and this is like, if Mac Jones was to come in and wasn't at the level cerebrally that they would want, then it's like, okay, now we're kind of in trouble, because we may not have the O-line, we may not have this or that for him, and he may not be as mobile. So I think that's why a lot of people talk about the lack of athleticism, because that will fall solely back on the organization and the coaching being able to put that player in the right situation, put the right pieces around him to make him successful, rather than a person like, again, Deshaun Watson, Russell Wilson, Kyler Murray. Those guys been scatting around, throwing the ball their whole life. They're not worried. I think it was, Russell has been, sacked, I think, the most out of quarterbacks over however many years. I think Deshaun Watson was up there last year or the year before that, but they understand that these dudes going to get you out of jail.
I tell you, the other thing that's becoming really interesting that may play into Allen's situation here is the last couple of years we've seen Dallas go to a third top end receiver and draft high. We've seen Denver come back with the same strategy. Clearly in Seattle now, they're talking about what happened to them was they didn't have a third option to go to late in the year when they were trying to hit all those deep balls. Atlanta now is talking about the possibility of drafting yet another receiver to put three great ones on the field out there. Richard, from your standpoint, is it tougher when you're facing a great quarterback, maybe a scrambling quarterback, or a team that can throw three of those monsters out there that makes it impossible to defend? And can you imagine Allen Robinson playing on one of those teams, Seattle, if you will, with two of them, and now all of a sudden you got three?
It's challenging because individual matchups are going to be challenging. These guys can get open, but there's still only one football. So it's still only one guy you got to go to, and depending on the quarterback, like where you give, you have to, like, there has to be a decrease somewhere. So if you have three top end receivers, that's going to cost you. So your offensive line likely isn't going to be up to snuff like you need it to be. And if the quarterback can't get the ball off, none of them matter. If he's getting hit in the face every play, None of that matters. That's why you see in the NFC West, I mean, J.J. Watt just went there. Like, there's a ton of pass rushers. So it's like, if these offensive lines aren't all world, then you can have the best receivers in the world and the ball's not getting off. You know, you just saw it in the Super Bowl with Pat. You know, when those tackles were out, I mean, he had some of the best receivers in football. You know, some of the most dynamic, but you can't get the ball to them. It matters not. And so I think there has to be balance. That's why I think teams are going to struggle unless you find a rookie, you know, a guy on a rookie deal along with a rookie deal quarterback. And you can say, hey, you got two dynamic veterans and a flashy rookie. Then I can see it working out great because you can still have a good O line and be able to pay some guys in the middle, pay at the left tackle, and make it work. But I think, of course, it'd be impossible, you know, to defend individually unless you somehow pay two great corners, which very few teams have.
Yeah, to me, the other really interesting place is Baltimore now. I mean, clearly Baltimore is one of the best teams in the league, right? They can play defense. They get after people great. They blitzed everybody in the secondary at one time or another, I think, during the course of the season. But you also have a quarterback in Lamar that is not going to throw it that often. They're always going to be a little bit run-based. But Alan, every time you had a pass thrown to you, it likely would be against man-to-man coverage because defenses have to commit so many resources to trying to stop that running game. How would something like that factor into a decision for you?
Yeah, you know, I think you see teams have success, you know, even with that. And the first team that comes to mind who has success with a very similar style of play, I would say is Tennessee Titans. You know, They almost had 1,000-yard receivers this year. And again, when you sit back and watch them play as you're watching some other teams and some of the offenses that they go against, you know, their receivers are able to get a ton of catch and run opportunities because they're able to work off the play action. And you get those linebackers run committing. You know, you get that safety in the box. You know, you're able to get some very advantageous looks on the outside. You know, so again, I mean, you look at a team like that who I would probably say doesn't throw the ball an extreme amount in Tennessee, but they almost had 2,000-yard receivers. You know, I think that they had, I think A.J. Brown caught for over 1,000. I think Corey Davis was right there, you know, at 1,000. So it definitely, you know, presents opportunities on the outside for receivers. You know, again, I mean, nothing you would want more than a heavy box, you know, because like I said before, once you beat your man, you'll get some more single high matchups. You know, you're able to catch and run. You're able to, you know, work the middle of the field a little bit more because guys really have to respect the run. You know, so you definitely get some very good opportunities. I even think that last year for us in Chicago, once we started to, you know, change our scheme a little bit, you saw in the last 6 to 8 games or so, everybody's run after catch started to go up because we were able to run the ball. We were able to get that pull from the backers. We were able to catch deep crosses on the run. We were able to catch, you know, some short posts on the run and things like that.
Richard, I want you, and I'm going to let Alan go last on this one. Give me the percentage chance that he is tagged in Chicago with no contract. Give me a percentage chance that he signs a long-term deal, percentage chance that he's tagged in Chicago, which then forces him to do some stuff, right? Then game on went from that point. And give me the percentage chance that somehow they just let him go as a free agent.
I don't know their cap situation. That's what's hurting me right now. I need to know what is their cap situation? Where are they at, George?
I would say I would go out on a limb and say it isn't the greatest.
Okay, and Trubisky is a free agent, right?
Yes.
I'd say 8%. I think it's low. I think it's low percent of him getting franchised because you got a free agent quarterback, which means you either have to draft or you have to sign. And quarterbacks, you know, take up a huge amount. So that's uncertainty. If you tag him, that's money already gone. That's, you know, guaranteed 1 year, huge cap hit. So I think the likelihood of it being a 1 year deal is low because in a year where the cap goes down, you don't want to have a 1 year unflexible cap hit. You know, you can't play with it. You can't extend. You can't do anything to make it, to decrease it at all. So I think it's low.
I told you should get him as your agent.
And I personally, I have no idea what the percentages are, you know, because I mean, as a player, you know, when you look at the big picture, you know, I think that, you know, whenever you start to bring in, okay, let's say hypothetically a quarterback has to be drafted, you know, I think like everyone sees around the league now, like you want that guy to have some weapons, you know. I mean, based on the situation of a quarterback, you know, so then you have that aspect, you know, then once you talk about the cap, you know, that kind of, you know, turns the table, you know, to a whole different direction. So, I mean, it's literally like in a Rubik's Cube right now. It's so many different situations and factors, you know, that can possibly factor in versus, you know, the tag, a long term. Because I think that at the end of the day, what a lot of people don't realize is, I mean, a long term definitely gives you more flexibility this year with the cap. You know, I think that's another huge factor of anybody who's, you know, signing long term. I mean, because we've been hearing about a lot of guys possibly being tagged, whether if it's, you know, Dak Prescott or other guys in the market, but it's like there's no cap flexibility with that, you know. So I mean, in this year of any long-term deals would give you the flexibility to be able to prorate some of that money into when the league's cap is back at its normal and starting to ascend again, you know. So I mean, it's a ton of different situations, you know. I've tried to wrap my head around all of them, and still I couldn't point to one to say which is more likely than the other.
Yeah, it's so interesting because all the television deals are about to get wrapped up, if you believe what you're hearing. Essentially, if what I'm reading is true, that everybody is doubling their price of what they were willing to pay. You likely get an Amazon into the mix as far as paying as well. Is it possible that both of you guys are sitting there thinking about money on this $180 million, you know, cap situation and way underestimating what this market is going to be like a year from now?
No, I'm not underestimating it at all.
Yeah, me neither.
Yeah, I think people are going to be able to maneuver in a way that allows them to push it forward, you know. And that's why I think multi-year deals are going to happen, because people are going to be aware of that. The cap could jump from 182, 183 to 222, 225, you know. And so that's a hard thing to deal with for teams is that amount of space that quick, you know, because then if guys are under contract and, you know, guys are going to be frustrated, or if you got a bunch of 1 year deals and now you got all this cap, now you got to start dishing out money to guys who may not be deserving. And so I think people are going to either push out money for guys that they already know are going to be there, you know, long-term quarterbacks, et cetera, receivers, that have made huge impact. And they'll push their money out as guaranteed and allow them more space in the interim. But I think it's going to allow for teams that haven't been as competitive to be really competitive, because some teams like the Saints and the Eagles are having to make some very tough decisions and put really good players back on the market who wouldn't otherwise be on the market.
Yeah, and to kind of piggyback on what you were saying, you know, as well as some of the other teams who have kind of over the past 365 days kind of foresaw this and kind of rolled over some cap for years and things like that. So it's definitely ways that you can make this year in particular work, you know, rather if it's multi-year deals and proration, and rather if it's rolling over cap, rather if it's restructure guys. I mean, we see that happen every single day, you know. So I mean, yeah, the cap is going down, but I don't see it being as significant in some situations as it is to others. You know, like you were saying, you do have some teams who are right up against the cap, you know, but again, you have others where if you get a multi-year deal done with a couple guys, you know, you can lower the cap hit for the year that you need it to be the lowest, you know. But once that money kicks in and you have it being possibly 225 next year or whatever the case may be, you know, you're able to have that flexibility to now, you know, prorate some of that money out into the future when the cap starts to go back up.
Hey, Chris, have you heard about the like voidable years and stuff that the Patriots were doing with Tom?
Sure.
And they did with Revis? I guarantee you there are going to be a lot more teams using that. There hasn't been a ton of teams using that in the past. I mean, it's mostly been a Patriots thing. I know of a couple other teams that have one-offed it. But if you say, hey, Arob, we're going to go a 4-year deal. 2 years guaranteed, yada, 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 with 2 voidable years at the end. We'll figure it out. You're basically signing a 2-year deal with 4 years of flexibility. So they can move the money to years that he won't even be there, with it being understood that those are voidable years either way. Like the cap hit is 48 million, something crazy, something insane. And it doesn't matter to either team because, hey, after the Super Bowl and yada, yada, yada year, 5 days after Super Bowl, contract's terminated, we're good. Everybody's hands free unless we extend, unless we negotiate a better deal. And I think you'll see more of that.
For sure. I think it's a lot of different maneuvers that are undervalued. I think that people are wrapping their head around, the cap being low, and it is going to affect some guys in certain situations. But, after being in this league a long time, you see the flexibility of that the teams have. You see the restructuring, you see the rolling cap, you see all these things factor, and also I think a lot of the teams who have some more flexibility, who are even creating flexibility, we kind of foresaw this over the past year or so, so I think that some teams even planned out based on, last year's deals or certain deals and even restructured and guys going into the season, and the same will happen. I think that that's something that, because again, we have to remember that the minimum of the cap, it will be 180, 182 or whatever the case. But again, some people who rolled over cap, they're going to have a lot more cap space than others.
I tell you, Alan, I've been doing this a long time, and my BS meter, I'm pretty good at it, right? I've been interviewing coaches and players, and everybody lies to me. So I've got to try and decide what is the truth and what's not the truth. And I have no feel for you right now whatsoever. I can't tell if you want to stay in Chicago with a long-term deal, or if you've got your dancing shoes on and you've got all these people coming after you telling you are the greatest thing that ever happened and you've got to be had. This is back to college recruiting, baby. They are rolling it out for you. Do you have a feel for where you are right now? Which one are you right now?
I'll say this, and I'll be completely honest. It becomes a point in time as a player to where it's, I can't want to be in Chicago more than they want to have me in Chicago. That's the thing, if you asked me this question a year ago, you would have probably got a completely different answer. But at this point now, it's like, if we can make it work, cool. If not, cool. It's not, I'm not getting so caught up in, where it's like I said before, I'm not tying anybody's hands. I'm not begging. I'm not asking nor forcing anybody to pay me. Or like if we want to make something happen, cool, fine and dandy. If not, we both can move forward, and I think we see that in the business of sports all the time. It isn't an emotional thing. It isn't anything like that. It's if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. The show will go on, games will be played, I'll be catching passes next season. So for myself, it's like, I'm at the same time, obviously I've been in Chicago, we've had some success and things like that. So I do kind of, I do have a great feel towards them. But at the same time, it's like I said earlier, whatever the next chapter is, I'm ready for it. I'm ready to get to work. I'm ready to start, building whatever it is, wherever it may be.
Yeah, just for the record, the reason I wanted Richard to be on this podcast with me all the time is his BS ratio was 0. I never heard anything come out of his mouth that I didn't believe to be true, or at least his version of the truth. So when it says 0, I want you on the show with me.
Well, I appreciate that, Cris. I try. I think this free agency is going to be fun, man. Like I said, I just got told I'm involved in a tampering period, so we got 2 days of fun. But like I was telling you, Arob, it's difficult. I was going to ask you this, like, how are you going to go about the communication aspect? Like, if a team says they're it's usually a fast process. Like,
I told somebody else this. I did a Clubhouse a couple weeks ago. I said free agency is literally equivalent to the 20 seconds on Family Feud with Steve Harvey after they pick the stuff. It goes that fast. A lot of people think that you're sitting there, you have time to do this and weigh your options. It goes fast. And decisions have to be made quickly, So over the past month or so, I've, kind of been, talking to my agent about some possibilities and things like that. So, I mean, I kind of know different situations that I'm, you know, open to and stuff like that, but it goes fast. People think that you have time to sit back and, you know, think, let me get a couple of days on it. And you get a few minutes, 10 minutes, 12 minutes, 15 minutes. Don't get me wrong. Some guys more so than others, but it goes fast. It's not a timely process at all.
So what's a like a 2-second, like if somebody offered you this and go high, don't lowball yourself, because I don't want to hear from your agent talking mess to us. But what's an offer where a team could say, hey, and you like, hey, I don't even need to talk to anybody. Let's sign it up, regardless of location, culture, situation, etc. Where you're like, that's the number I'm walking up in the table.
Yeah, you know, for sure. When you start to look at the top 3 salaries of receivers, you know, in the league, you know, I think as a player, you know, in that kind of average of realm, you know, that's almost a no-brainer. You know, when you look at the market and things like that, you know. So, and then I think the next step is, again, I mean, possibly being free is, you know, depending on certain situations, you know. Again, I mean, you know, just tracking some of the quarterback situations. Unfortunately, I was hoping some more dominoes would have fell, you know, before free agency, as far as where some guys may be at, you know, kind of sitting back, seeing what Deshaun Watson and Russell Wilson and guys like that, you know, because as a player, obviously, if those things can possibly impact you and affect you, and if you have, you know, a choice to potentially be able to play with those guys, you know, you definitely want to be able to, as a player, you know, factor that in, you know, again, seeing, you know, I mean, the kind of player that Deshaun Watson is. So it's like, okay, now, like, all right, let me see now. If it's a chance, you know, there, then, you know, that's definitely something as a player that you would for sure want to make happen.
Yeah. You guys are awesome, man. This has been really fun. I never got to be a free agent other than broadcasting a couple times, but I never got to experience what you guys are experiencing. And it's been fantastic. I'm going to guess what's on the rest of your shirt there. Alan, you want to make a final comment here? Richard and I have talked about some of the social justice stuff that's happened this year. I don't even know how to ask the question. So I want to say, did it move the needle? Are we better today than we were at the beginning of this football season? And if the answer is yes, then where is next step? What's the next most important thing that we can all try and strive toward?
I definitely think it's better. I don't think it's where it needs to be at yet, but I definitely think it's better. You know, and the reason why I say that, because I even see somebody saying that, you know, having athletes talk about politics or whatever the case may be.
The LeBron thing, yeah.
Talked about LeBron James the other day, but it's like, for us, like, we are forms of politicians in our community. You know, people listen to players. People, you know, we're the ones that are doing the community events. We're the ones that are talking to the youth. We're the guys who have the 7-on-7 teams and stuff like that. So it's our due diligence to try to make our voice heard in the community, you know, and it's people that are looking up to us, you know, from that standpoint of what are those guys doing? You know, how are those guys affecting the community? You know, so I think for guys just continue to, you know, put their actions where their mouth is, as far as, you know, being in the community, speaking. You know, I think it was huge. A lot of guys that, you know, you saw NBA players, NFL players, you know, registering their guys to vote, you know, and things like that. Steps like that is huge. You know, again, I mean, this is a year that I saw, you know, probably more than anybody on my team be registered to vote. You know, I remember, you know, the last election, you hear guys coming around, you know, saying, you know, that they didn't vote, they didn't care and things like that, you know. So I think the next step on top of even voting and stuff is starting to get guys more so involved in their local elections, you know, and being able to actually create change in those local communities rather than just, you know, when it's national elections and things like that. Is guys have to be able to, you know, get with these local politicians and hear what's being talked about and try to affect that way as well, because on an everyday basis, those people in those communities are the ones that are being extremely affected. So I do think that as a whole, we're making progress, but I think that us as a culture and everyone involved has to keep their foot on the gas to be able to continue to expedite that process and to keep that process going.
It's been awesome, guys. Thank you very much. Alan, big fan of your game. I hope you get paid through the roof. I'm from Florida, so a little return back home wouldn't be all bad for me, but you know how it goes. I'm rooting for you. There you go. Great show. Richard, thank you again, partner.
Appreciate it. Good talking to you, Arob.
All righty, you guys too. Take it easy.
You too, brother.
All right. Special thanks to Alan Robinson. That was a lot of fun. We'll be back next week with another great conversation. Hopefully another tremendous guest for you. We thank you for tuning in and subscribing, and we'll see you next week.